Welcome to Creepypasta. Please like, share and subscribe. This will help us make more content for you. Thank you.
My child doesn't exist. I just had the strangest experience today. I was in the kitchen, getting dinner ready, and was about to tell my daughter to get ready, because her father and sister will be home shortly. I froze, because I only have one child, but at that moment in time, my heart and soul knew and loved this non-existent child. At the same time, I realized what was happening. I had déjà vu of a girl running around the living room who wasn't my real daughter, but in that memory, she was. All of this happened in less than a second, but now I have this strange sense of loss. It's more than a little unsettling. Edited to add, the not my daughter was younger than my real daughter, maybe 3 years old. It wasn't a memory of my real daughter either, because they looked different. I can no longer have children, so not a future daughter.
Comments. I have a living son who is 14 months old. Prior to him I had 3 miscarriages. Before I conceived my son, one night, I had a dream that I was in a house with 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. At the start of the dream I was in the living room and suddenly remembered that I had 3 kids, and I was panicked thinking, they're on their own, they're unsupervised, so I ran into the kitchen and there were my children, playing quietly. I went up to my daughter, who was sitting in a chair reading a book. She looked like she was about 4 years old. When I got closer she looked up at me, got a huge smile on her face, and said, "Mama, you're pregnant." That cycle I conceived our son who is now curled up in my lap sleeping. I know this sounds so stupid, but sometimes I think those were the children I lost. I remember their faces pretty clearly, and they all had thick, curly hair like my son. Edit. Wow, thank you so much everyone for your sweet words and support. I've never told anyone in real life about that dream, except my husband and mom, because I thought people would judge me. For me, the dream was a way for my children to tell me they're not alone, they're together, and they're still with me, and excited for our future family. Sometimes I wonder why my body failed those other children, but then carried my son to term perfectly, but I remind myself of that dream, and that they weren't angry and weren't suffering. When I was 15, I was at school and my mom was home alone. She was sitting in the kitchen on her phone and this little boy, maybe about 4 years old, with blonde hair and blue eyes jumped out from behind her chair, at her as if he's saying boo, but no sound came out. She got so frightened, she sat in the backyard with my dog for half an hour and realized, why am I hiding outside from a little boy? She ended up telling me about it, and said to me that little boy seemed so familiar to her. I had a baby boy last year, and my mom says every day he looks more and more like that little boy she saw, and she even said it when she met him for the first time. They both looked at each other like they already met once. It was such a weird experience. Missing 4 hours and ended up on a military base. About 20 years ago, my best friend and myself went to Ridgecrest, California for a party. The party ended up being a 50th wedding anniversary, and we were improperly dressed for it. We ate at the banquet hall, left to the home of my friend's cousin. We left a short time later, headed back to Bakersfield. I was sitting in the driver's seat, she was in the passenger seat, and we began to enter the freeway on-ramp. That was the last memory either of us had until 4 hours later. I kind of woke up, but I didn't feel like I was sleeping. I more or less became aware of our surroundings, and that I was in the passenger seat. I looked over at my friend, and her eyes were staring into the dark distance. Quickly, I realized we had somehow ended up on a dirt road. I yelled her name, she kind of snapped back to reality. There was a chain link fence along the driver's side of the car, with barbed wire on top. The road was graded, but the surrounding field was not. For some reason we were going 30 or 40 miles per hour down this dirt road and we start freaking out. Almost immediately we drove right up to a white sign about 20 by 30. It had large red and black letters. The top portion read, "Warning." The bottom, active landmine field. I screamed for us to turn around, and my friend hit a U-turn in the dirt, as we both screamed at the top of our lungs. By this point we are both in a full panic. We have no idea where we are, how this happened, where we are going, but we are moving. She's driving 50 to 60 miles per hour in the Tahoe, headed the opposite direction. We traveled maybe 2 minutes max. Suddenly we see lights from every direction approaching, just as fast as we are running, if not faster. When they got within 100 yards or so, they turned on their sirens and we realized it was the police. Military police. We have somehow ended up deep inside of a military base. They came driving through ungraded desert to stop us. We were removed from the vehicle, two 20-something girls in party clothes sobbing. The MPs asked us how we got there. They asked what gate we had come in. They kept us in the desert for hours. My friend was put into the back of an MP car for a good portion of it, while I sat in the dirt leaned against the fence. They ran our names, discovered my friend had someone write a bad on her account a few counties away and nothing else. We were questioned, and finally after 4 hours we were released. They escorted us out of a gate. We realized we were now on the north side of the city, when we had left originally from her cousins on the south side of Ridgecrest. We went home. Told maybe 5 or 6 people, who all either assumed we were crazy, or lying. We stopped telling it, until recently I told my fiancé. Then I made a TikTok, which way more people watched than I expected, and here I am. We were not on any type of psychedelic drugs. We both share the same memory, including the time lapse. If I was alone in the car, I would have thought it was a dream. It was the scariest experience of my life. I would have posted this from a throwaway account, but you need karma credit to post here.
Comments. Crazy story, man. I believe stuff happens to lots of people. Most people won't speak of them, because people think they are crazy. My stepbrother and I are best friends. I'm 40 and he's 49. He finally broke down and told me a story of missing time. He got in his car to run some errands. About 4 to 5 hours later he woke up in the middle of nowhere, here in Utah, where we live, and he was about 50 miles from home. He has no psychological issues and no drugs. He said he remembers being extremely dehydrated afterwards, and he totally had no idea how he got to where he was going, and it's to a place he'd never been. I've begged him to go under in hypnosis, to try to figure out what happened, but he said he's too scared to find out. Which is crazy to think, he's already scared of what might have happened. You ever thought about going under?
I had something wacky like that happen in the middle of a school day, and yeah, didn't talk about it for a long time afterwards. I was rushing to get to class on time, because I'd stupidly scheduled my classes and only had 10 minutes to get across the entire college campus. I kept checking my watch as I hurried to reassure myself that I wasn't late yet. And then I got to the middle of campus, a big paved area decorated with concentric circles. As I crossed the outermost circle, I started to feel odd. By the time I got to the middle of the concentric circles, I was feeling very strange indeed, and then everything went white. Next thing I knew, I was crossing out of the outermost circle and walking away from the area, still on my way to class. I checked my watch, realized I was an hour late, ran in and panicked to the classroom anyhow, and got there early. I sat down and looked back and forth from the clock on the wall to my watch in total confusion. I'd lost an hour somehow, right in the middle of campus, surrounded by other people. But my classmates were showing up and the professor, so I just set my watch back an hour and tried to concentrate on the lesson. Just put it out of my mind and didn't think about it again for years. Not something I really tell people. And that's waking up where I was supposed to be, not miles away and hours later.
My mom had a similar experience, not too far from yours. She was driving home from bowling, coming up on the exit to California City, not incredibly far from Ridgecrest, about 45 minutes, when all of a sudden she wakes up, still driving, but entering Porterville, about 2 hours away. My dad was calling, freaking out about why she hadn't made it home yet, and she had no words. Couldn't explain how she traveled 2 hours away without knowing. If I recall correctly, the time didn't add up either. Like it was physically impossible to make that distance in the time gap she was missing. Anyway, thought it was interesting to share a similar story from the same area. I would like to also add, this isn't a first for her. Been happening periodically since she was young. I'm convinced she's been abducted. Not based solely on this one instance, but a culmination of all the crazy things she's had happen to her. Some involving other people that can corroborate.
Do you have a creepy story? Please share it with us in the comments, and we will post it on the channel. Please subscribe. Thank you.